Hey everybody, Questwise here. We're down on the game table today, and I want to talk about a role-playing game that was given to me by someone who I highly admire to check out and give my thoughts on what impressed me or if anything stood out to me. And I'll tell you right now, this is a role-playing game that has completely sort of blown my mind because it's something that I never would have thought could have ever happened. I reviewed a lot of games in my history here on the channel, and there have been some pretty unique ones, and I guess I never have imagined something like this could have come across my table. And it's fascinating. And it's something that's really excited me quite a bit since I received this. So I was given this small zine RPG, Skater Quest, by Travis Bramble himself. I've known Travis for a while, and I kind of in the back of my mind have known that he's a gamer, but to me he's always been a phenomenal artist. I've bought some stickers and stuff from him in the past. I bought a few other products from him, so I knew that there was a gaming connection there, but I guess I've never really sort of reached out and pursued that sort of gaming conversation with him. This last Cherry Capital Comic-Con over Memorial Day weekend, he gave me a copy of this, a role-playing game that he created called Skater Quest. And I have to say, I'm completely blown away. Not because it's a huge game, it is literally just a zine-style game, complete within itself. But the theme of this game, I guess, is what is really, really connecting with me here. Now, when I was in high school and I began my journey into role-playing games, I was the nerdy kid, right, who would go on his lunch period to the library, and we would play sort of a pseudo role-playing type games. You know, we'd sit around and talk about reading Lord of the Rings and R.A. Salvatore's Dritz series. I was not a skater. I was not athletic. I had friends who were athletic, who played basketball and were on the baseball team, but I was none of those things. And in my school, small town that I grew up in, I knew that there were some skateboarders who did play Dungeons and Dragons, but we weren't friends. They were sort of worlds apart from each other, right? Hell, in high school, I didn't even know I played Dungeons and Dragons. There was sort of a weird dichotomy of stuff going on between myself and what I thought role-playing was. I was just beginning. I was just starting, and it was a strange new world, a magical new world. But so the skaters and I never got along, and I didn't know anything about skating. I was not athletic in any sense of the word. So when I saw this, it kind of took me by surprise that we could have a role-playing game based upon skateboarding. I want to go over this with you really quickly. I've learned more about the sport, the art of skateboarding from reading through this than I have ever learned or have ever known in my entire life. And it's magical. It really, really makes me want to dive into that world. It makes me really want to maybe not go out and skateboard because that's just not my body type, right? But it makes me really, really want to explore more about what it was to be a skater, particularly in like the 90s, maybe early 2000s. But I never thought I would see these two themes brought together into a role-playing game. So this is Skater Quest by Travis Bramble. It is a complete role-playing game in a small zine format. It is based off of a game called Tunnel Goons, which I have never played. I did look it up, and I did purchase a copy, a PDF copy over on DriveThruRpg, And I will try to put a link down below in the description as to where you can find Tunnel Goons if you're interested. But I'll also put a link in the description as to where you can find Skater Quest as well. So I have not played Tunnel Goons. I have not really even explored it. I haven't even really looked into it. But it is a system which uses only 2 6-sided dice. Each player will only need 2 6-sided dice, which I think is cool. I'm really into the minimalist type of role-playing games recently. I love the fact that, you know, you can fit an entire role-playing game into a small zine format and use, functionally, just very few dice. That's what you're going to need to play. Of course, you'll need a character sheet, which are available in the back of this, but you can just do it on a piece of notebook paper. I think it makes it more thematic and kind of 90s-ish if you do it on a piece of notebook paper, and of course a pencil. What's really cool about this, and again, it is sort of something that has really sort of piqued my imagination because this is not a world that I've ever explored before, is that the art of skateboarding is very important to how this game plays. The stances of your feet on the board can have an effect upon your particular roles, your particular tasks that you're trying to do. Something else that's also very important to the game and your character is the skateboard shape. And he goes into detail about how the wider shapes and the thinner shapes, what they mean, and how they're going to sort of project themselves into a game mechanic, but what they mean into a real life sort of situation, and how tricks are done. One of the biggest features of this game, one of the things that's going to really impact your character, are virtues and vices. And I think this is really cool because this is an aspect of the game that's going to make your character, it's going to give you that flavor. It's going to give you that sort of intensity when it comes to setting a difficulty number by the judge or the game master, right? And using your virtues or your vices in those types of roles, making the difficulty number easier, making it more difficult based upon what you're trying to do. It gives you that role-playing experience. It adds to that narrative, and I think that's really, really cool. You can kind of make up your own, but Skater Quest does give you some options in here, and I'm going to show you those a few here. So you have, and this again, this was super thematic to me, and I really loved this aspect. So a couple of the virtues and vices. There's the Skate Pro. You have one singular focus, and it's to become a professional skateboarder. You have the best fashion, and you go for the newest tricks. Okay, cool. I knew a couple of people like that. The Skate Rat. Everything in your life revolves around skateboarding. You don't care about sponsorships or going pro. You just want to be on your board and do some big tricks. I knew some people like that. Again, I'm not a skateboarder, but I knew these people. The Skate Nerd, and I think this is one of my favorites. You know the names of every trick and every famous skate spot. You spend more time studying the world of skateboarding than actually skateboarding. These are cool thematic little narrative hooks, virtues and vices that you can add to a role, to a difficulty, to the game itself to make things more alive and more narrative and more thematic. So, you know, if you had a virtue or vice of being the skate nerd, just think about that kind of thing. You're out at the park with your crew, and everybody's throwing off some sick tricks, right? And you want to try to do something, but you know the tricks, but you've spent more time sort of studying like skating magazines and watching other people do things and learning all the lingo that you don't really know how to do those tricks. So this might make the thematically, it might make you doing a trick or you trying to pull off a trick a little bit more difficult. And I think that's really, really cool. And I think that's a really fun aspect of like entering this world of being a skateboarder, but doing it on a tabletop sort of way. Then you got your skater abilities, right? You have ollie, speed, and style. These are kind of your stats in the game. Ollie is how high a skater can jump on the skateboard. Speed is how fast you can push and ride. And style is how unique your sort of style is when you try to land tricks and stuff. So the whole basics of this game is actually contained in this one little thing right here. You roll one die plus the second die plus your skateboard talent equals the total trick score. And the game master is going to set the difficulty of the trick. Now, it goes a little bit deeper than just sort of going to a skate park. There are some skills in here as well, too, that are levelable. So, you have your focus speed, or your focus, which is use your speed, and you have these levels that you can sort of level up in the game effectively. But it goes more than just sort of showing up at a skate park with your friends or your gang or your team or your pals and pulling off sick tricks. While that can be an entire session, while that can be an entire thing, the game actually gives you ways in which you sort of can push yourself into more of a campaign style. And you can use your skills and your abilities to sort of push it even further. So like, say you're at the skate park with some friends, you're pulling off some cool tricks, you're trying to do those kinds of things to sort of, have a session. But what happens when the police show up and tell you can't skate at this particular park? What happens if your board breaks during a particularly crazy trick and you need to try to secure some money to get a new one? Right? There's this aspect of sort of creating a campaign, making it a real world experience into bringing that sort of world to life. It's more than just doing cool tricks. And I think that's a big part of this game. And I think that's a really, really, really fun part of the game. But it's just a minor part. It's that sort of using these skills, these abilities to tell real world stories of sort of recreating growing up in that time period, skating with your friends and doing cool stuff. But there's also life out there too, and the game system is elegant enough and simple enough that it can emulate that type of experience. Again, game is very, very short. You have your skater accessories. These are your equipment guide, right? So you have wax, you have energy drinks, sport drinks, lubrication for your boards. And then in back here, it goes into creating your skater. And then it goes into landing tricks, which is the sort of meat and potatoes of the game. This is how the game is played, talks about the difficulty levels, narrating the trick and talking about how you're doing the trick, setting a trick's difficulty. A slam is if you fail a trick. It's sort of like exhaustion points or taking damage, and if you take enough, you have to sort of set some time out. Possibility you're gonna die is pretty unlikely, but the fact that you might become so exhausted you need to sit out for a while, you need to go home and take a nap, kind of thing, is pretty likely, kind of stuff. So that's sort of your hit points of the game. It goes into a bunch of different modifiers. Stoke points. It's a reward for a skater for landing a big trick, a creative trick, or anything that impresses the crew. Every skater starts a session with 1 stoke point. These are kind of your narrative points, right? You can use these points, you can gain more of them, but you can use them to sort of activate skills and do cooler stuff. And back is the impression system. This is kind of cool. This is sort of your it's not really an experience system, but in a way it sort of is. When you're trying to impress somebody, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a judge at a competition. It could be, the example that he gives in here is you're trying to impress a girl to give you a ride home. And so you pull off a cool trick, and if you do it well, there's a sort of a sliding scale of what she's expecting to see from you. And if you complete those abilities, or you roll successfully, she's going to give you a ride home because she thinks you're kind of cool. If you fail, she's like, yeah, my dad doesn't really like you. Peace. So it's a cool way to sort of set up a thing where, again, the same sort of situation. The police show up, and this is sort of your way to try to impress them. But like, hey, man, we're not really doing anything bad here. We're not trying to hurt anybody. Like, this is all we're trying to do. And if you can impress them or show them, like, hey, these kids are just out here having fun, cool. If you fail to do that and you just kind of come off as being kind of a dick, then they're probably going to kick you out of the skate park, kind of thing. So that's the impression system. Very, very cool. In the back of here, we do have the experience system. It talks about leveling up your character and sort of moving the narrative forward as you're playing sort of a campaign thing. This would be a great game for one-offs. This would be a cool thing where you just create a skater and you're at a skate park with your crew, and the game master is running sort of an opposing crew, and you're just trying to like out skate each other, right? That would be a cool one-off kind of experience. But there is the ability to go through and create sort of a campaign system. The very back of the book itself is the skater sheet. Like I said, super simple, but I think thematically for me, having grown up in the 90s, I would want to do this on a notebook piece of paper because, you know, it's more thematic that way. That is Skater Quest. I did talk to Travis a little bit about this. He said that he has some ideas for about an expansion for this as well too. Being a sort of fantasy and science fiction gamer that I am, one of the first ideas I had while I was sort of reading through this and sort of I mocked up a character and pulled off some, you know, sick tricks just here at the table, kind of soloing it myself. One of the things I thought about, the first thing I thought about was, wouldn't it be cool if you had sort of a Dungeons and Dragons cartoon sort of moment, right, where your skaters are at a park, something happens, they get pulled into a fantasy world or vice versa, and have to take on like a crew of goblin skaters, right? Or who's led up by a big bruising orc, and now you have to try to test your skills and impress some goblins, otherworldly goblins, who are also skaters, but, you know, unbeknownst to you, try to pull off some crazy tricks, and they might be using sort of magic to enhance their skills a bit to try to outshow you. But just this goofy idea I had, I might try it out later and kind of test out the waters a little bit, and play with the idea of sort of adding a fantasy element to the Skater Quest. Zine role-playing game by Travis Bramble. Please go check this out. I'll put the link down in the notes below as to where you can get this over on DriveThruRpg, as well as Tunnel Goons, which was what this game was based on. Until next time, my friends, I'm Questwise. Please stay safe out there in this crazy world, and as always, game on.